First Contact and Deception. The Zarkanian Empire's grand cruiser Eternal Dawn emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull reflecting the distant sunlight. Supreme Commander Vexthor stood at the bridge's observation deck, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he studied the blue-green planet that would become their latest conquest. After centuries of expansion, the Empire's resources were stretched thin, their colonies demanding more than they could provide. Earth had appeared in their long-range scans as an anomaly, a resource-rich world with a developing civilization, far from any competing galactic power. Perfect for their needs. Initial probes had reported a fractured species still fighting among themselves, using primitive fossil fuels and only beginning to explore their own solar system. Prepare the diplomatic envoy, Vexthor ordered, his voice carrying the artificial warmth they had perfected over countless first contacts. The Zarkanians had long ago learned that conquest through deception was far more efficient than immediate force. Remember, we are here as friends and mentors to these humans. The diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, its advanced stealth systems ensuring it remained undetected until the planned revelation. Their target was the United Nations headquarters in New York, where they would make their grand entrance. As the ship decloaked above the East River, the expected panic ensued. Emergency sirens, military mobilization, and chaos in the streets. But Dr. Sarah Chen, watching from her office at the UN's newly formed Extraterrestrial Contact Division, noticed something odd. The alien ship, while impressive, seemed deliberately positioned to cast an imposing shadow over the building. Their timing during a major General Assembly session was too perfect. "They've been watching us," she muttered, making notes on her tablet. "This isn't first contact. This is a show." The Zarkanian delegation, led by Ambassador Kelleris, presented themselves with calculated humility. Tall, elegant beings with iridescent scales and flowing robes, they appeared both alien and relatable. Their message was simple. They had come to help humanity join the galactic community, to share their advanced technology, and to guide Earth toward a brighter future. "We ask only for limited access to your natural resources," Kelleris announced to the General Assembly, his translator converting his harmonic speech into perfect UN standard languages. "In exchange, we offer the stars themselves." But as the world's leaders debated the proposed treaty, a pattern emerged that troubled Dr. Chen and her small team. Every Zarkanian offer of technology came with resource concessions that seemed minor on the surface, but would grant them control of key strategic locations. Their proposed cultural exchange centers were always near major military installations. Meanwhile, Colonel James Martinez of the newly formed Global Defense Initiative had been running simulations based on the limited data they had on Zarkanian technology. "Their ship's energy signatures are off," he reported to a closed committee. "They're masking their true military capabilities. These aren't diplomatic vessels. They're stripped-down warships." The Zarkanians' patience began to wear thin as humanity's leaders delayed signing their treaty, requesting more time for review and consultation. Vexthor, watching from orbit, received increasingly desperate messages from the Empire's Central Command. Their resource crisis wouldn't wait for human bureaucracy. Dr. Chen was working late one night, cross-referencing Zarkanian cultural documents with their resource requests, when she found the correlation. Every world mentioned in their historical records of peaceful cooperation had been stripped of specific rare earth elements, the same ones they were asking for in the treaty. None of these worlds were mentioned in later documents. She rushed her findings to the emergency session of the Security Council, but it was already too late. The Zarkanians had received their orders. As she entered the UN building, the sky lit up with the arrival of the Empire's main fleet. The time for deception was over. Vexthor's voice boomed across every communication channel on Earth. "Your inability to recognize our generous offer leaves us no choice. The Zarkanian Empire claims this world by right of superior civilization. Resist and face extinction." As humanity scrambled to respond to this betrayal, Dr. Chen shared one final discovery with Colonel Martinez, a weakness in Zarkanian communication protocols she had decoded from their diplomatic transmissions. "They think we're primitive," she said, determination in her voice. "Let's show them how primitive humans can be." The Zarkanian Empire had made a critical mistake. They had assumed humanity's fractured nature and technological gap made them vulnerable. They hadn't realized that centuries of conflict had taught humans to be suspicious, resourceful, and above all, dangerous when cornered. As their ships took up attack positions around the planet, they had no idea they had just started a war unlike any the Empire had ever faced. The Empire's fatal mistake. The first wave of Zarkanian attacks came at dawn. Their warships descended through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation, energy weapons cutting through military bases and communication centers across the globe. Supreme Commander Vexthor watched from the eternal dawn, expecting the swift surrender he'd seen on countless worlds before. Instead, he got chaos. Unlike other species who centralized their command structures, humans had spent centuries preparing for the loss of their main communication networks. Within hours of the initial strike, thousands of independent resistance cells activated. Military bases presumed destroyed continued fighting from hardened underground bunkers. Civilian communication networks, deemed too primitive to bother jamming, buzzed with encrypted messages. "Impossible," Vexthor muttered, watching the tactical display as another ground force reported unexpected resistance. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. They shouldn't be able to coordinate like this." In her underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Sarah Chen worked frantically with a team of engineers. During the brief diplomatic contact, she had collected terabytes of data on Zarkanian technology. Now that knowledge was their edge. "Their systems are more vulnerable than they realize," she explained to Colonel Martinez. "They built their empire on technological superiority. They never needed cybersecurity like we did." Martinez nodded, remembering decades of Earth's digital arms race. "While they were conquering planets, we were fighting off millions of hackers every day." The first real shock to the Empire came during what should have been a routine occupation of New Delhi. A Zarkanian battle group landed in the evacuated city, their sensors showing no significant military presence. Then the streets themselves seemed to come alive. Civilian drones, modified with electromagnetic pulse generators, swarmed the alien forces. Construction robots, reprogrammed for combat, emerged from underground parking structures. Captain Zellera, leading the ground assault, had barely sent a warning when the human counterattack began. Indian Army mechanized units, their vehicles retrofitted with hastily analyzed Zarkanian shield technology, burst from hidden tunnels. The battle was over in hours, with 3,000 elite Imperial troops captured or killed by what they had dismissed as primitive resistance. "How did they adapt our shields so quickly?" Vexthor demanded, throwing the battle report across the bridge. "Those were civilian vehicles." The answer lay in humanity's greatest strength, their diversity of thought. While the Empire's technology had evolved along a single, efficient path, humans had explored countless approaches to solving the same problems. When they captured even a single piece of alien tech, thousands of engineers worldwide approached it from different angles, finding applications the Zarkanians had never considered. The Empire's next shock came from the sea. As their ships positioned themselves over Earth's oceans to begin resource extraction, they detected no significant naval activity. The humans' primitive submarines and aircraft carriers had withdrawn to safe harbors. But beneath the waves, something else was moving. Dr. Chen had worked with oceanographic institutes worldwide to modify underwater research drones. Swarms of these small, autonomous vehicles now attacked the Empire's extraction ships, their primitive nuclear batteries powering electromagnetic weapons that played havoc with Zarkanian systems. When the ships tried to retreat, they found their navigation compromised. Humans had been mapping magnetic anomalies for centuries and knew how to use them. In orbit, Vexthor faced a decision. The Empire's standard protocol for such resistance was orbital bombardment, destroying major population centers until the planet surrendered. But Earth's population was dispersed, their infrastructure redundant. They would need to destroy most of the planet's surface to force submission, which would defeat the purpose of conquest. More concerning were the reports from his tech analysis team. Humans were not just using captured technology. They were improving it. A Zarkanian shield generator, designed to protect against energy weapons, had been modified by Japanese engineers to also deflect kinetic impacts. Australian quantum computing experts had found ways to predict and counter Imperial targeting systems. "They're learning too fast," his senior advisor warned. "Every hour we delay gives them more time to understand our technology." The humans pressed their advantage. Colonel Martinez coordinated a global strategy that played to Earth's strengths. Guerrilla attacks kept Imperial forces off balance. Captured alien weapons were quickly reverse-engineered and mass-produced in hardened factories. Most importantly, humanity's diversity proved to be their greatest weapon. While the Empire's forces followed standard tactical protocols, every human resistance group developed their own unpredictable strategies. In low Earth orbit, a converted communications satellite struck a fatal blow to Imperial pride. Using technology derived from their diplomatic vessels' stealth systems, humans had modified the satellite to be invisible to Zarkanian sensors. Its payload was simple, a cloud of primitive tungsten rods accelerated by gravity toward the Empire's largest troop transport. The ship's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against simple kinetic bombardment. As Vexthor watched the transport split apart in the atmosphere, he realized the Empire had made a catastrophic error. They had judged humanity by their technology level, not their potential. Every defeat taught these primitives more about Imperial technology. Every victory gave them confidence to try even bolder strategies. The Empire was not just failing to conquer Earth, they were giving humanity the tools to become something far more dangerous. And as reports of defeats continued to flood in, Vexthor faced an uncomfortable truth. The longer they stayed, the stronger humanity would become. Adaptation and innovation. In a repurposed automotive factory deep beneath Detroit, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display that would have been impossible 3 months ago. Around her, teams of engineers from 24 nations worked on technology that merged human ingenuity with Zarkanian principles. The air hummed with the sound of prototype quantum processors, hybrid machines that combined alien computational theory with human parallel processing innovations. "We're not just copying their technology anymore," she explained to Colonel Martinez during his weekly inspection. "We're improving it." She gestured to a captured Imperial fighter being dismantled by robotic arms. "Their ships are perfect, but inflexible. They never needed to adapt because they were always superior. We're teaching their tech to evolve." The Global Defense Initiative, once a hastily assembled response team, had evolved into humanity's unified command structure. Traditional rivalries fell away as nations pooled their resources and expertise. Chinese quantum physicists collaborated with Silicon Valley programmers. Russian aerospace engineers worked alongside Brazilian biomechanics experts. Every culture, every scientific tradition, brought its own perspective to understanding and enhancing alien technology. But the Zarkanian Empire was far from defeated. Supreme Commander Vexthor had adapted his strategy, focusing on containing Earth's burgeoning technological revolution before it spread further. The Eternal Dawn sensors had detected humanity's first attempts at replicating Imperial faster-than-light technology. They couldn't allow these upstarts to achieve interstellar capability. "Launch the viral attack," he commanded. The Empire's best AI systems had analyzed human computer networks, creating what they believed would be an unstoppable digital plague. As the attack began, Earth's electronic infrastructure seemed to collapse. Power grids flickered, satellites fell silent, and communication networks went dark. For 6 hours, the planet fell quiet. Vexthor allowed himself to feel the first surge of victory in months. Then, inexplicably, the lights began coming back on. What the Empire didn't understand was that humanity had spent decades fighting digital wars among themselves. Computer viruses, AI attacks, and system infiltrations were daily occurrences on Earth. While imperial systems were designed to be perfect, human networks were designed to be resilient. They didn't just survive attacks. They learned from them. Dr. Chen's team had anticipated something like this. The internet was built to survive a nuclear war, she reminded her colleagues as they launched their counterattack. Let's show them what it can do. The Empire's overconfident AI systems, accustomed to dominating lesser species networks, found themselves drowning in a chaos of human digital warfare. Decades of computer viruses, evolved through constant cyber conflict, were unleashed on imperial networks. The Zarkanians had built perfect systems. Humans had built adaptive ones. Meanwhile, humanity's greatest breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team of teenage gamers in Seoul had been studying the Empire's tactical protocols through captured combat footage. They recognized something that military analysts had missed. The Zarkanians fought like NPCs in a video game, following optimal but predictable patterns. "They're too perfect," explained Kim Min-ji, the young team's leader, in a briefing that was quickly shared globally. In games, that's a weakness. Perfect play can be predicted and countered. This insight revolutionized Earth's defense strategy. Military AI, trained on human gaming strategies, began predicting imperial tactics with stunning accuracy. The Empire's perfect formations became liability. Their optimal attack patterns became traps. Humanity's chaotic, improvisational combat style proved superior to the Zarkanians' mathematical precision. In orbit, Vexthor received increasingly desperate reports. His ground forces were being outmaneuvered by inferior human units that seemed to anticipate their every move. Imperial electronic warfare systems were being overwhelmed by primitive but evolving viruses. Most alarming were the energy signatures appearing around the planet. Humans were not just copying imperial technology, they were developing hybrid technologies that the Empire's sensors couldn't properly categorize. Their adaptation rate is exponential, his science officer reported, fear evident in his harmonic voice. They're not just learning our technology. They're merging it with solutions we never considered. Every failure teaches them. Every victory makes them stronger. The turning point came when humanity unveiled their first major hybrid weapon system. The Prometheus Array, as they called it, combined imperial energy principles with human nuclear physics in ways the Zarkanians had never imagined. When the first test fired, it didn't just penetrate imperial shields, it completely bypassed them, as if they weren't there. Dr. Chen watched the test results with a mixture of pride and concern. They had created something unprecedented, weapons that merged the best of both human and Zarkanian science. But she couldn't help wondering if they were becoming too much like their enemies in their drive for technological superiority. Colonel Martinez seemed to read her thoughts. "The difference," he said quietly, "is that we're not doing this for conquest. We're doing it to survive." He gestured to the diverse teams working throughout the facility. "And we haven't forgotten what makes us human." As the Prometheus Array was replicated and deployed globally, the Empire faced a harsh reality. The species they had dismissed as primitive was now innovating faster than the Empire could adapt. Humanity wasn't just learning to match Zarkanian technology. They were transcending it. In his command chamber, Vexthor received a priority message from Imperial High Command. As he read it, his scaled skin paled. The Empire had never encountered a species that could adapt so quickly, could innovate so radically. The question was no longer whether they could conquer Earth. The question was whether they could afford to let humanity continue developing at this pace. The Empire would have to end this soon, one way or another. As Vexthor began planning what would become the Empire's most desperate assault, he failed to realize that humanity was already several steps ahead, preparing defenses for attacks they hadn't even launched yet. The turning point. The Eternal Dawn's bridge was silent except for the low hum of quantum processors as Supreme Commander Vexthor reviewed the latest Imperial directive. The message was clear. Earth had become too dangerous to either abandon or conquer conventionally. The Empire had authorized the use of their planet-killer weapon, the World Render. "Prepare the device," Vexthor commanded, his voice carrying none of its former confidence. Deep in the ship's hold, ancient machinery awakened, drawing power from dimensional rifts in ways that even the Empire's scientists didn't fully understand. The World Render was their ultimate weapon, capable of shattering a planet's tectonic plates. It had only been used twice in Imperial history. But on Earth, humanity had already predicted this escalation. Dr. Sarah Chen's quantum analysis team had detected unusual energy signatures from the Eternal Dawn weeks ago. Their simulations pointed to only one conclusion: the Empire was preparing something unprecedented. "They're desperate," she explained to the Global Defense Council, her hologram projected simultaneously to bunkers worldwide. "Their standard protocols have failed, so they're reaching for something they barely understand themselves." Colonel Martinez, now General Martinez, nodded grimly. "Then it's time for Operation Checkmate." Humanity had spent months preparing for this moment. The Prometheus Array had been a public demonstration of their technological leap, but it wasn't their true masterwork. In secret facilities across the globe, engineers had been developing something far more ambitious. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Eternal Dawn's sensors detected energy fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field. Vexthor dismissed the readings as natural phenomena. Earth's magnetic field had always been chaotic by Imperial standards. That was his final mistake. Dr. Chen sent the activation signal. Around the planet, thousands of quantum-enhanced electromagnetic generators powered up simultaneously. Each one was individually primitive compared to Imperial technology, but together, linked by AI systems that merged human neural networks with Zarkanian quantum computing, they formed something new: a planetary defense grid that used Earth's own magnetic field as a weapon. The effects were immediate and catastrophic for the Imperial fleet. Their perfect shields, designed to block energy and matter, were useless against the fundamental forces being manipulated. Ships lost power, their dimensional taps disrupted by magnetic fields that behaved in ways their sensors couldn't comprehend. "Impossible," Vexthor whispered as warnings blared across his bridge. The World Render, drawing power for its apocalyptic strike, became a liability. Its dimensional rifts, destabilized by Earth's transformed magnetic field, began to collapse in on themselves. "The thing about humanity," Dr. Chen had written in her project notes, "is that we don't just learn technology. We reimagine it." The Empire had mastered the manipulation of space, energy, and matter. But humans, with their centuries of working within limitations, had learned to achieve more with less. They didn't need to match the Empire's power. They just needed to understand it well enough to turn it against itself. As Imperial ships tumbled powerless through space, Earth launched its counterattack. Fighters emerged from hidden bases, their hybrid drives combining simple rocket propulsion with Imperial gravitic principles in ways that made them almost impossible to track. They weren't as powerful as Imperial ships, but they didn't need to be. Their pilots had trained in virtual reality simulations for months, learning to exploit every weakness in Imperial design. The space around Earth became a graveyard of Imperial technology. Some ships were disabled by the magnetic storm, others torn apart by weapons they couldn't detect, and still others fell to simple kinetic strikes from directions their perfect but predictable defensive systems didn't think to guard. On the Eternal Dawn, Vexthor faced a cascading systems failure as the World Render's containment fields began to collapse. The weapon's power, intended to crack Earth's crust, was instead feeding back into his own ship. His crew, trained to follow perfect protocols, had no contingencies for this scenario. In that moment of crisis, humanity revealed their final surprise: a transmission cut through the chaos, broadcasting on Imperial frequencies that should have been impossible for humans to access. Dr. Chen's voice, translated into perfect Imperial harmonic speech, delivered an ultimatum. We have mapped every weakness in your ship's containment systems. The world render's collapse can be stopped, but only with our help. You have 10 minutes to surrender, or your fleet's pride will become its pyre. The Empire had never surrendered before. Their protocols didn't even include procedures for it. But as Vexthor watched the countdown displayed in Imperial numerals, another impossible human touch, he realized that pride had already cost them everything. When the surrender signal finally came from the eternal dawn, it marked more than the end of a battle. It was the moment the galaxy's greatest empire learned that true strength didn't come from perfect technology or flawless protocols. It came from the ability to adapt, to innovate, and most importantly, to imagine possibilities that no one else could see. The Empire had thought they were facing primitives. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what they needed: a reason to unite, a challenge to overcome, and just enough advanced technology to spark an explosion of innovation that would change the galaxy forever. Empire's retreat. 1 month after the surrender of the Eternal Dawn, Earth's orbit had transformed. The wreckage of Imperial vessels was being systematically dismantled by swarms of hybrid human-designed recovery drones. Each piece of technology, each fragment of advanced materials, represented another opportunity for human innovation. But in the Imperial flagship's primary command chamber, now repurposed as a negotiation room, the focus was on the future. Dr. Sarah Chen sat across from Supreme Commander Vexthor, their meeting broadcast to billions across Earth. The once proud Imperial leader seemed diminished, his iridescent scales dulled by the stress of defeat. Yet there was something else in his bearing now, a reluctant respect. "You must understand," Vexthor said, his translator conveying the complex harmonics of his speech. "The Empire has never encountered a species like yours. We achieved our technological supremacy through millennia of careful advancement. You did it in months." "We had motivation," Dr. Chen replied simply, "and something you never had: the ability to look at problems from thousands of different perspectives simultaneously." The terms of the Empire's withdrawal were unprecedented. Humanity wasn't just demanding their departure, they were dictating conditions for future interactions. The Empire would remove all military forces from the Sol system, but more importantly, they would acknowledge Earth as a sovereign power capable of defending its interests beyond its own solar system. General Martinez, watching from a secondary command center, couldn't help but smile at the irony. "They came to conquer us," he remarked to his staff, "and instead they gave us the stars." But the victory had brought new challenges and responsibilities. Humanity's leap forward hadn't just given them the ability to defend Earth, it had catapulted them into a galaxy full of complex political relationships and ancient powers. The hybrid technologies they'd developed were already revolutionizing their understanding of physics, medicine, and computation. In research centers worldwide, scientists were only beginning to understand the implications of their innovations. The quantum-enhanced magnetic field manipulators had applications far beyond defense. The AI systems that had merged human neural networks with imperial computing were opening new frontiers in consciousness research. Even the simple act of reverse engineering imperial technology had taught humanity new ways of thinking about scientific problems. "We want to establish trade relations," Dr. Chen continued in the negotiation room, "not as subjects or subordinates, but as equals. Your empire has technology we could use, and we've proven we have innovations that could benefit you." Vexthor shifted uncomfortably. The Empire's central command was still struggling to accept this new reality. The humans hadn't just defeated them. They'd done it by creating technological approaches the Empire had never conceived of. The hybrid drives on their fighters, the way they'd weaponized their planet's magnetic field, their ability to predict and counter Imperial tactics, all of it demonstrated a creativity that threatened the Empire's technological supremacy. "There will be those in the Empire who will see you as a threat," Vexthor warned. "Your rate of advancement, your unpredictability. Some will argue for more aggressive action. They would be unwise to try," General Martinez interjected via hologram. The display of humans' mastery of Imperial communication technology was not accidental. We've kept some of our advances in reserve. The defense systems you've seen are just the beginning. This wasn't an empty threat. In the weeks since the Empire's surrender, humanity had continued to innovate. The Prometheus array had been upgraded 3 times. The magnetic field defense grid now incorporated principles that even Dr. Chen's team didn't fully understand yet. Earth's first true starship was already under construction, incorporating technologies that would have been impossible just months ago. But it wasn't just military technology that was advancing. The unity forced by the Imperial invasion had sparked a renaissance in human cooperation and innovation. Former enemies worked together on global projects. Resources once spent on internal conflicts were redirected to exploration and advancement. Humanity had gotten a glimpse of their potential, and they weren't going back. As the negotiations concluded, Dr. Chen made one final point. "Your Empire's mistake wasn't just underestimating us," she said to Vexthor. "It was assuming that technological superiority meant the same thing as advancement. We've learned that true progress comes from diversity of thought, from the ability to see problems from multiple angles, from being willing to fail and learn and try again." The Empire's fleet departed Earth's solar system 3 days later. As the last ships disappeared into hyperspace, humanity was already looking to the stars with new eyes. They had learned they weren't alone in the galaxy, but more importantly, they had learned what they were capable of when united by a common purpose. In her lab, Dr. Chen was already working on new projects, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with their hybrid technologies. The Empire thought they were superior because they had perfected their technology, she wrote in her journal. "We proved that perfection is less valuable than the ability to adapt and grow." They showed us what was possible, but we showed them what was next. The Zarkanian Empire's retreat marked the end of their era of unchallenged supremacy. But for humanity, it was just the beginning. They had taken their first steps into a larger galaxy, not as conquerors or subjects, but as innovators and explorers. The stars that had once seemed impossibly distant were now within reach, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what they could really do. In the years that followed, the story of Earth's resistance would be told across countless worlds, a cautionary tale about underestimating primitive species. But for humans, it was something else. Proof that their greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their weapons, but in their ability to face impossible odds and find ways to overcome them.